Story 1. I am not very emotionally stable. Story 2. Smart enough to know my limitations and that there are different kinds of intelligence. Smart enough to know that this question is a test of arrogance rather than intelligence. Story 3. IQ over 150, photographic memory, can speak 13 languages, can remember long number sequences after a quick glance, and can do equations that normally require a calculator. Has read maybe 700 to 800 books. Also, a jobless alcoholic and a smoker who is currently living in the forest while it is raining and has 57 cents in the account. So, define intelligent. Story 4. I would not say I am a genius or anything, but one thing I have noticed that bothers me is the lack of self-awareness people seem to have these days. Story 5. Somewhere in the central part of the curve. There are many uninformed people in the world, and many individuals more intelligent and experienced than I am. Story 6. It varies. Sometimes, I feel like I am surrounded by unintelligent people. Other days, I wonder how my brain is getting enough oxygen to keep my legs moving. I was a public speaker for years, so I believe my emotional intelligence is decent. I have gotten pretty good scores on intelligence quotient tests. The older I get, the more I find I have to learn, and the more I realize how little I really know. Story 7. In general, it has always been above average, but as I continue realizing how unintelligent people are, I keep moving up the list. Story 8. I am considered very intelligent by society's standards in terms of educational attainment. That is why I always proceed in every endeavor as if I have no knowledge and I am a complete beginner. Nothing hurts like hubris. Story 9. Considering the rise in anti-intellectualism and the things I hear right-wingers and most straight men say, I am a genius apparently. Story 10. So first, Dunning-Kruger. I think I am around average. Smart, as in high school, was easy, but not specifically intelligent or educated beyond that. Story 11. Honestly, a lot more intelligent in some ways, but I am a complete fool in other ways. I think it is ignorant to make it a blanket statement. Story 12. Dead average. On a regular basis, I interact with some brilliant people, as well as others whom I often wonder how they have managed to survive thus far. I feel like I can look up and down and see plenty of peers at either end, so I am comfortable saying I am sitting in the middle. Story 13. I was told I was gifted in school. Whatever that means. I think I am more creative than I am smart. I believe that, in terms of raw intelligence, I may be a little above average. However, I am always surprised by the poor decisions some people make, the illogical things they say, and the lack of curiosity some people exhibit. But am I wrong to be surprised? Or is average less intelligent than I think? Story 14. Intellectually, I was told I was highly intelligent. However, I don't know a lot, so I want to keep learning. Even if the person beside me acts less knowledgeable, I'm sure he has something I don't know. Story 15. The only official data point I have is a 28 overall score on the American College Testing Test in high school in 1998. I know that is not perfect, but for a first attempt, it was good enough to get into my college of choice at that time. Story 16. Smart enough to drive my psychologist mad. Smart enough to have survived my childhood on my intelligence alone. Not smart enough to do something as simple as trust my instincts, feel my emotions, and get out of my head. Story 17. My boss says I am the smartest on my team. I feel completely inadequate to do my job. I feel like she thinks too highly of me and that any day I will disappoint everyone. Story 18. I am smarter than most and I am a woman. In this world, that is not always a good thing because very few parts of our society actually function by merit or pure intelligence. Knowing more and being smarter makes me feel that I do not belong. Sometimes, I wish I were less intelligent because I would not feel so frustrated by how irrational, unfair, selfish, and corrupt most of society is. Also, foreseeing where humanity is headed in the next few decades makes you want to stop trying. As long as the majority of people continue with business as usual, nothing will change, and we will not survive as a species. Story 19. I am typically around my dog. I believe she is smarter than me. She does not need to work and knows 2 languages. Story 20. I'm smarter than most of the people around me, but I'm also as dumb as a box of rocks. I need to find some new people to be around. For real though, intelligence varies greatly from person to person. One of my best friends is terrible at math and English and cannot write an essay to save his life, but he can draw and animate literally anything. He can draw perfect circles on command. It's incredible. Meanwhile, Ben Carson is a world-renowned neurosurgeon but thinks the pyramids were built as grain silos. So, story 21. It depends on the subject matter. If you are speaking of general intellect, I would consider myself probably just above average. If you are talking about others in my field, I consider myself much more intelligent than about 90% of them. Story 22. I am confident that I am above average, but as the years pass, I have come to understand that lived experience and wisdom are very important. I can do complex math, but what is that worth? I am someone who has a lot to learn. Story 23. Socially, I am very intelligent, intellectually above average, but academically, in terms of my performance at school, I was below average. Hello, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Story 24. I really do not know what to tell you because sometimes I feel like everyone is an idiot and just as often I feel like I am the idiot. Story 25. My opinion of myself declines every year. I do not know if it is just perspective, but the whole world seems to be generally on the same downslope over the last 10 to 15 years. Story 26. I know statistically I am slightly right of the bell curve. I worked with some people who were absolutely brilliant, and I knew where I stood. They probably kept me around because I made them laugh. Story 27. Overall, certainly above average. Not because I am some kind of genius, but because the average is lower than most people think. The majority of people finish high school and go no further. I went to university, earned a degree, obtained a master's, and earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree from Oxford. My current job is as an engineering director in a technology company at age 31. I am no genius, but I would be very surprised if that were below average. Story 28. In a general sense, above my local circle of acquaintances, and probably equal to or just a bit more than my closer friends. I have a good memory, am good with real-world, everyday use math, am pretty well versed in history, and have more understanding of technology, including phones, computers, and associated peripherals. Some of them are smarter than me in other areas, notably their professions, but on average, I place myself just above them. Story 29. Depends on the subject. I am a software engineer with over 25 years of experience. Do not ask me to swing a hammer, though. Story 30. I generally assume I am the least knowledgeable person in any room. My parents never let me go to school, and it shows. I have tried to study as an adult, but information leaves my brain immediately. Story 31. I am a 28-year-old law student working as a phlebotomist. I have applied for approximately 30 jobs, both paid and unpaid, at law firms. 95% of my applications received no response, while 5% resulted in rejections. I feel discouraged. Story 32. Relatively intelligent. When I am at work, I am Einstein by comparison. For reference, someone I work with once asked what day Black Friday was on. Story 33. Probably depends on which type of intelligence you are referring to. In some ways, I definitely think I am above average. In others, I am probably below average. Story 34. Maybe slightly above. People say I am smart. I guess I learn pretty quickly, but I certainly have a lot to learn still. It depends on who is around me. Sometimes I feel like the smartest person in the room. Sometimes I feel like the court jester. Story 35. I am going to avoid overanalyzing the question because intelligence can manifest in different ways and assume we are just talking about raw computing capabilities such as learning quickly and memorizing. In that way, I feel average in some ways and above average in others. I work with brilliant engineers whom I simply cannot compete with in knowledge and performance. However, they excel extremely well in their niche. Outside of that, I have found areas where they reach out to me for help. When people I put on a pedestal ask for my help, I feel confident identifying those as areas where others around me can find value in my skill set. Story 36. I think I am kind of unintelligent, but I also work for the public, so I am also somewhat intelligent compared to others. Story 37. Most of the people I know are technology professionals and science researchers, so I am middle of the pack at best. I am smart. I am just surrounded by people who are smarter. Story 38. Based on my experiences, I started with a slightly above average intelligence quotient and a below average emotional quotient for my country. However, within the community where I grew up, I always believed the opposite because I was surrounded by academics, which skewed my perception of others until adulthood. I would also argue that having a higher intelligence quotient enabled me to improve my emotional quotient over the decades. Nowadays, I would consider both to be slightly above average, though my intelligence quotient might be slightly lower and emotional quotient higher if I compare myself to my socioeconomic demographic within the region. Story 39. If I am to believe my intelligence quotient scores from 6th grade still have any accuracy, then I might be more intelligent than about 99% of people I encounter at random. However, in practice, I do not make that assumption as I go about my life. I am ready to be schooled by anyone at any time. I think I have become more humble with age. Story 40. I am not very smart, but I have a reputation at work for being really clever. It is not a humble brag, because I really wish my brain worked better. Story 41. I would never consider myself intelligent. I know what I know and do not know what I do not know. The curiosity drives me to learn more. I do, but if it does not, it does not. Some things curiosity drove me to, and I could not grasp, so I gave up. I am not a quick learner at all. At the very least, I try to use logic for most things. I would consider myself of average intelligence and above average curiosity. Story 42. Intelligent enough to know that intelligence cannot be accurately measured on a single scale, allowing easy comparisons with other people or a simple answer to this question. Story 43. I do not compare myself to others. I enjoy being around a diverse group of people. Some may be book smart and engage in intellectual and philosophical conversations, while others may keep things simple and fun. Either way, I just like the people around me. Story 44. I am not very smart, but I am incredibly self-aware, which I believe slightly sets me apart from others. Story 45. Well, half of my country thinks that the Gulf of Mexico is called the Gulf of America. It is not. Does that mean anything? I do not know. Story 46. I feel like I am above average because I have some truly intelligent friends. I am definitely below almost all of them. They are doctors, engineers, and dentists. One of them took the medical college admission test for fun about 5 years after graduating to see if he still wanted that. Anyway, I can hold my own with them, but yes, I would say above average. Story 47. Honestly, it just depends. When it comes to work, everyone here knows more about what is going on than I do. When it comes to my immediate family, I think I am the 4th smartest out of 6, and the 2 that I am putting myself above are not stupid either. They just both lack common sense. Story 48. I believe people have many types of intelligence. My stepfather had an intelligence quotient of 162. He had a photographic memory and was exceptionally intelligent. However, he had some major blind spots and did not see things that I thought were quite obvious. He had strengths that were extraordinary, but he also had areas that were weaker than average. I think we are all a mixed bag. If we are gifted in some areas, we often fall short in others. Story 49. Social and status perception of those around me suggests I am on the higher end. I work as a researcher at a university. Because of that, many of my family members and friends assume my intelligence is higher than theirs. I get small comments here and there and I blush. The reality is that I am likely on par with them. I just have more discipline and have learned how to hone my curiosity in a way that is advantageous with respect to career, networking, and so on. Story 50. Usually, I would say just below average, but now I know very well that I am smarter than these red hat employees who walk into the store. Story 51. I have a very difficult time connecting to people who are less intelligent than I am. This has led to a situation where every friend I have is equally or more intelligent than I am. Story 52. I don't believe I know I am smarter than most. I would never state I am the smartest, and I would never tell anyone or any group that I am smarter, but anonymous here. Story 53. I consider myself of average intelligence, but everyone around me perceives me as being highly intelligent for some reason. Story 54. I am average at best. People around me are average to above average. I have met some less intelligent people, but I think most people I know are as smart or possibly smarter than me. Story 55. Compared to the people around me, I am a genius, but that says more about the people around me than my actual intelligence. Story 56. I am clearly the least knowledgeable person at my job. I am a graphic designer who works with rocket scientists, former astronauts, and people with multiple doctorates in highly specialized fields. I am the person who makes things look appealing. Story 57. At work, I am below average, unfortunately. At home, I am slightly above average. In the population of New York City, I am probably a tiny bit below average. Story 58. Compared to my social circle, I am probably average or on the lower side. I am the only one who does not have a master's degree or higher. They are all either doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, physical therapists, or similar professionals. I did not need one as an engineer, but might get my Master of Business Administration at some point. I do think I am in the upper level of social intelligence, though. I am essentially always the leader and organizer for any group, and I know how to identify other strengths and use them for the betterment of the group. Story 59. When I am with my best friends, I am easily the least intelligent person in the room. It is a nice change of pace and one of the reasons why they are my best friends. Story 60. I genuinely believe I used to be smarter than the vast majority. I attended Harvard University and worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. However, I think I have suffered some significant cognitive decline compared to my peers, and now I am below average. If I had to guess, it is due to not getting enough sleep. I have no real evidence. Story 61. There are many different forms of intelligence. If you are talking about logical intelligence, I believe I am above average. If you are talking about social intelligence, I am probably below average. I believe everyone's total intelligence is about equal, and we are simply specialized in specific areas. Therefore, I would not claim to be above or below the people around me in intelligence. Story 62. I like to say, I am not smart, I am just clever. I can deduce information well, understand feelings, and sense the vibe using logic and common sense faster than most. I make very accurate, educated guesses, but never assume they are 100% correct until proof is visible. Most of my perceived intelligence comes from my knowledge of languages and etymology. Story 63. I do not compare myself to others. That would not be fair to them. In all seriousness, I know who in my social circles is intelligent and who is not, and I know how to talk to all of them. It hardly matters, except for the occasional frustrating conversation with less intelligent people. Story 64. Much more intelligent than those around me. One of them starts middle school next year, so she will pass me by pretty soon. Story 65. I have more of some kinds of intelligence than most people around me, and less of other kinds of intelligence than most people around me. My kinds of intelligence overlap with what intelligence quotient measures, but intelligence quotient is a poor measurement, especially for adults. When I try something new outside my comfort zone, I am reminded of the kinds of intelligence I lack. Story 66. I was forced to take the official Stanford Binet Intelligence Quotient examination when I was 6 years old. This was ordered by a licensed professional because I tested negative for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder but was showing signs. I know that number and it is startlingly high. I have no plans to share it. I also know that intelligence quotient does not automatically equate to intelligence. It is the quotient for how quickly a person learns and the amount of data that is retained when they learn. Higher intelligence quotient generally means a faster learner. An applied high intelligence quotient usually means intelligence. I am a voracious learner. I consume it. Story 67. There are 8 types of intelligence. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the state conducted a full day of testing to determine its severity. Overall, my intelligence quotient is 110. Here are some surprising findings. My mental organizational skills are in the bottom 40%. However, my visual spatial skills are in the top 2%. They said they have never seen a score that high. Story 68. That's complex. I know my intelligence quotient, so I'll use that as a metric to explain this. The average intelligence quotient is 100. I'm sporting around a 130. That's 2 standard deviations above. The number is more complex due to the wide array of scores involved, but 130 makes a nice round number. When I'm interacting with people, I believe I'm only slightly smarter than them, so I treat people at maybe 120. Unfortunately, what I think are relatively simple concepts seem to be difficult for many people. Things like second-order consequences, conditional hypotheticals, that sort of thing. We all know the memes. So I need to simplify ideas down further until I feel like I'm talking to a 90, and then it's understood somewhat. Then I resume talking to them as a 120, and the cycle continues. Yet through all this, despite this happening with most interactions I have, both offline and online, I still treat hundreds like 120s and think I'm only a little smarter than the average person, not in the top percentile. In summary, I think I'm a little smarter than the average person despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. I have to consciously remind myself that people aren't as smart as I think they are, and it's made me incredibly forgiving and patient with people I'm talking to, though I fully expect replies about being arrogant and condescending merely because I'm using my intelligence quotient as a metric here. Story 69. I'm definitely hovering around average. There are things I know less about or nothing about, but I also know a few subjects better than people around me. I have tendencies where I study a subject obsessively for 6 months to 4 years. Once my curiosity is satisfied, I move on to another subject. Story 70. I used to think I was either way smarter than anyone or the one person who did not get it. Now I have progressed to feeling like I am probably above average, but possibly just fooling myself. Story 71. I'm not exactly book smart. I kind of let my brain rot in high school, but the amount of explaining I need to do when watching movies is shocking. There are countless people who just take things at surface level. If you don't tell me, then I don't know. Let's not get started with the lack of general knowledge. Story 72. I know enough to get by, but you can always learn more from observing people around you. Never assume you are the smartest. Story 73. In some ways, I am quite intelligent. I learn quickly, especially in mathematics and science, and I have a very good memory. Many people tell me that my manner of speaking reflects intelligence and can sometimes be intimidating. On the other hand, my difficulty in understanding social cues caused me a lot of bullying during childhood. My hand-eye coordination and poor sense of direction make many tasks that others find easy challenging for me. Additionally, my level of empathy, especially when I am angry, is so low that I often feel disgusted with myself afterward. Overall, I am probably around average. Story 74. Last time I took an intelligence quotient test, I was 6 and scored 121. I came from an abusive hoarder home and threw myself into school as an escape. I went to a small rural school in the Midwest United States, graduated as valedictorian with top 1% test scores, received a scholarship, partied through college, and still graduated with honors. I used the degree to get my foot in the door and worked my way up. Then I saw what was at the top and decided I would rather have a lower stress job and not be anyone else's boss. Now I make enough. I lost all desire to climb any ladders. I do not think I am the smartest person in the world, but I do know I cannot blend in easily. I do not walk around acting self-important or think that anyone less intelligent is beneath me. Intelligence is so varied. I feel like everyone can teach me something. Yet it feels like I am always being singled out as smart and expected to lead. It is like life is a series of group projects, and I am still the nerd who is supposed to get everyone an A. I think it is likely vocabulary and speech patterns that give me away, but I am not certain. Story 75. I'm probably average compared to those around me. My father is the smartest person I know by a mile. He does nothing but read all day and has so much useless knowledge in his brain. My father's side of the family is all incredibly smart but terrible people. My mother's side is all quite dumb except for 2 people, but they are not all terrible people at least. I'm not that smart, but the things that I took interest in I learned inside out and excelled in, like sports. I'm smarter than most of my friends, but that doesn't say much about me. They are all addicts. You smoke weed all day, which takes a toll and makes you dumber even if you think otherwise. Story 76. Well, I am a member of Mensa, or at least I was until I stopped paying dues during COVID-19. That being said, intelligence quotient tests are not a good measure of intelligence. I seem far more intelligent than the rest if you want me to teach you calculus or if you want me to code an interactive web page, but I am a proper dunce if you put a guitar in my hand or ask me to solve a Rubik's Cube. Story 77. People think intelligence is like winning a lottery ticket when actually it can be isolating. I do not care about that. I just want people to stop being so self-absorbed and genuinely listen to each other. Everyone else can be smart and correct. I just want to be happy and have things be simple. Story 78. I am very ignorant and uneducated by definition, not as a slur. I had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder during my whole childhood, so I did not retain anything I learned whatsoever. I was surprised I passed my general educational development test by 1 point. I was not diagnosed until 3 years ago, and am now trying to catch up on everything I do not know. I am slowly learning something new every day that I should know. Story 79. I am not a genius, but I am above average, I think. I know quite a bit, but I also know there is much I do not know yet. Story 80. Depends on who I am around. At work, I am very confident. I work with people who are not very intelligent. However, my friend group consists of university professors, lawyers, and physicists. I hold my own at trivia night though. Story 81. Most intelligent people I encounter lack social intelligence, and vice versa. I tell everybody I am slow to set the bar nice and low. Very few people I meet are intelligent, street smart, and socially smart. Most people usually struggle with one area, which negates their strengths. Story 82. I received a lot of feedback saying I was smarter than average while growing up. However, at 37, I believe I am finally wise enough to know that I am actually about average in every way. Story 83. Some days I feel like I am way above average. Other days I feel like I am actually disabled. It is hard to tell. Story 84. I want to think above average in the top 30 of 100 of my high school class 21 years ago. I earned a degree in computer science instead of paleontology and have maintained critical thinking skills as time goes on. Story 85. Smart enough to stop at lines when driving and use low beams when it rains, while 99% of the population is not quite there yet. Story 86. I believe I am definitely in the upper echelons of intelligence, at least in the top 25%. The human body is just a complex machine, and intelligence is only one aspect of strength. I also believe that humanity's best and most important trait is how ideas can be applied in different ways, typically known as creativity. Just because the hardware or the brain's processing speed is good does not mean it is used efficiently, which is otherwise called wisdom, or for the proper software such as critical thinking and decision-making, which are taught and must be practiced. Story 87. Intellectually smarter than the vast majority, though I still have no clue what is going on half the time. Story 88. People who share my household? Unfortunately, it seems I am the only one with a functioning brain. This is one of those situations where you definitely do not want to be the smartest person in the room. Story 89. Depends on what you mean by around me. I live and work in a technology hub in a technology field. I am surrounded by incredibly intelligent people and some less knowledgeable ones too. I would say that I am probably average in that respect. When I look at the people I grew up with, that I socialize with online on social media platforms, or even your average person, I would say I am well above average. Story 90. The average person I talked to forgot September 11th, the coronavirus disease, and January 6th. I think I am the only sober person in America. Story 91. I am aware of my surroundings. I can ask questions and think for myself. The average person does not seem to have this ability. I learn quickly when I practice things, but slowly when I read. This is double-edged and seems to be about average, possibly a bit above. I am creative and have an eye for detail. This is above average. I have only gotten lost 3 times and have never forgotten a route. In all 3 cases, extreme tiredness and walking a route backward caused my forgetfulness. This seems to be rare. I would place my intelligence quotient at about 110 to 115. My emotional quotient, on the other hand, is definitely on the lower end, as I have a limited understanding of others and their feelings. Story 92. I do not know if I am any smarter than the people around me. I am unreasonably persistent with good pattern recognition, perhaps, but not inherently more intelligent. Story 93. I have a broad range of friends, from some that are in the clearly supergenius category. I am a 49-year-old Massachusetts Institute of Technology mechanical engineering graduate, so it is not like I am a kid thinking my other kid friends are smart. I have enough experience to recognize extreme levels of intelligence when I see it, to the graduated high school by the skin of my teeth category. Among them, I think I am roughly average. I think the biggest thing to note here is that intelligence manifests in many different ways and circumstances. Some people are wildly intelligent about a very specific set of things and not strong in others. There are people in the graduated high school by the skin of my teeth category who are the most financially successful of my friends because they were not school smart, but they are astonishingly brilliant in ways that do not show up in school tests. One of the most interesting people I have ever met nearly failed out of college because he was not interested in it and was interested in many other things. He built a networked MP3 server you could control from any room by punching in codes from alarm pads he installed in several rooms in our house in 1995. I am conventionally smart in that I got stellar grades and have done well for myself. I am a generalist, so I am competent at a wide range of things but not exceptional at any. My breadth is what sets me apart, but in any given field I am average at best. I am below average at many things, but if you average all the different skills, I am above average at more things than most people I know. However, I will never reach the depth of expertise or mastery at anything that usually prompts people to say, "Holy cow, talented." Intelligence is context sensitive. The smartest people can be really lacking in areas others might find obvious. And people who do not rank highly on grades are sometimes the smartest people in the room. It just depends on what you are doing in the moment. Story 94. I'm smart enough to know that people come to me for advice on things and to vent about issues they want listened to. I excel at problem solving and recalling facts and events, but not at specific phrasing of words. I regularly surprise my friends by remembering details of things they told me over a year ago that they clearly forgot, and I repeat other details about the conversation back to them. I'm very empathetic, emotional, and sensitive, and can usually tell how others are feeling, but I lack the social intelligence to do much about that. I make a really awkward first impression, and I'm bad at starting conversations. I consider myself a reactive conversationalist. I'm not good at starting conversations, but I can keep them going as long as the other person keeps talking. People also say I'm very funny. I have met or seen very few people I would genuinely call wholly unintelligent. Otherwise, I don't really think about this topic. I know what I'm good at and bad at, and I know what the people around me are good and bad at. My father was brilliant with numbers, science, and machines. He read 1 to 2 novels a day. He had multiple master's degrees and worked as an accountant for about 20 years. One day he got laid off, and after that he could not find a single job of that caliber again. He was always told he was overqualified, so he started taking odd jobs and retail jobs to make ends meet. He was also not very good at talking to people, was kind of abrasive, and very bad with changing times. He was good at doing what needed to be done to provide, but he was a bad father. Not because he was mean or evil, but because he simply did not know what to do with us or how to talk to us. Story 95. Maybe average, hopefully above average. Opens next door and reads posts. Turns out I am a genius. Story 96. I am your average smart kid in high school who did not have to try. Life then challenged me and I had to apply myself. I was one of the top students in my class in college once I got organized. Walking around a shopping mall, I assume I am in the top 15%. At Walmart, the top 5%. At work, around engineers and other smart people, I am probably right around the middle. But every once in a while, I meet a truly gifted person and feel like an absolute idiot. Story 97. I like to think I am rather intelligent, and the people in this town make me think so even more strongly. Many of them still believe the tariffs called mango menaces will help the United States of America. More than a few still have his election flags in their yards. Story 98. Based on my writing in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics aptitude compared to my classmates and now my coworkers, I am above average. Although there is a difference between intelligence and knowledge, and while I consider myself intelligent, I do not know everything. Story 99. I know I have slightly above average problem-solving skills and memory. However, my past experience learning from all the more experienced people I used to work with is that memory will get worse over time or fade. So I have started to take detailed notes on a lot of my work. Story 100. I'm fortunate to have intelligent people around me. Whether they are honest with themselves is another matter. Story 101. In general, I would say average, maybe, but in many areas below average and in some above. This is probably a non-answer because everyone is likely like that. I have no idea how you measure intelligence. Just remembering a bunch of information cannot be it. Can it? I think it is more like applying knowledge and figuring things out, not just remembering things other people figured out. No idea. But I think everyone has things they connect with more easily than others and things they just cannot understand no matter what. I can navigate computers and certain programs, but I do not have a mind for programming nor an interest in it. I can do things with some three-dimensional modeling programs that professional-level artists cannot do. Yet they can use far more advanced programs to create masterpieces that I can only dream of making because it is an entirely different skill set. What seems super easy and trivial and worthless to me can seem very difficult to someone at that level. It is like a brilliant doctor who cannot figure out how to set up their email on their phone when an average 10-year-old can do it. Story 102. I have received unsolicited compliments from strangers about my supposed intelligence and articulation for most of my life, but I have never bought hype. I have always seen myself as average, mostly because I have never paid much attention to what other people are doing, and I was a decidedly average, lazy student in school. As I have gotten older and had more experiences interacting with the public in various capacities, I have begun to realize how uninformed and incompetent the average person is, and why people have told me I am smart. I have only recently started to believe it, not because I think I am special, but because most other people I encounter are frustratingly and overwhelmingly lacking in understanding. Average is not nearly as smart as I thought, and it is my Roman Empire. Story 103. I am surrounded by some of the smartest professionals in the field of embedded software in the entire country, so in comparison, I do not feel very intelligent. Story 104. I am smarter than my parents. My girlfriend, my brother, and I are equal. As for friends, if I admire them or feel jealous, it usually means they are smarter than me. If they can hold a conversation on serious topics like finance or politics, I consider them equal even though we have different opinions. If they do not want to discuss serious topics, make fun of them, or worse, are very superstitious and like conspiracy theories, then they are less intelligent than me. I unfriended a lot of people, especially during COVID-19, because I could not tolerate the anti-vaccine movement. Story 105. Depends on context. Back in my home, I am definitely more intelligent and more knowledgeable than 90% of the population. The reason for this is that my country is so deep in the gutter that anyone with a modern education is simply leagues ahead. In America, I am just an ordinary resident. I am nothing special here. Story 106. I think I am pretty smart, but not too much. I have my flaws like everyone else. When I have mood swings, I feel so superior to others and very smart. Story 107. I think I am quite smart at learning new things and applying my knowledge. However, there is much I do not know, and I always ask questions to improve my understanding. Story 108. I have some very intelligent friends and some less intelligent friends. I personally see myself as part of the latter. Story 109. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, and during my college years, I was surrounded by geniuses. These people were incredibly smart and could understand the lectures instantly. I studied 3 times as hard as them but got lower grades. They could calculate the profile of a proton beam extracted from an accelerator in 10 minutes, while I often could not solve a simple differential equation. I was very frustrated, and they often made me believe I would never be a good engineer. Over the years, however, I realized these people had no mental flexibility, and their strong intelligence was limited to that specific area. Later, I found many of them in the workforce had failed miserably in their careers, confined to failing roles, working like lab rats who never see the light of day and earning mediocre salaries. On the other hand, besides working hard, I have always had a set of side skills that helped me solve complex situations using cunning, knowing where to look and where to ask for help. I have always been extroverted and able to surround myself with the right people, both in friendships and at work. I have solved workplace problems simply through dialogue, without any technical skills. Today, I am a successful engineer with a much higher salary than all of them, and I manage an entire team of people who report to me. I owe this not to my strong mathematical intellect, but to compensating for my intellectual shortcomings with hard work and experience. I have been able to acquire the necessary information at the right time. I believe this is another form of intelligence that they do not have. Story 110. Probably average compared to people around me, but I am also a graduate student at a research university, so I am surrounded by people who are at and above my level of intelligence on a daily basis. Sure, my intelligence quotient is in the 97th percentile, but intelligence quotient is only one of many different ways to measure intelligence. And when it comes to social intelligence, there are definitely times I am at a disadvantage. However, I have made an effort to become better in social situations and have made large improvements over the past 5 years. Before I get accused of being arrogant, the original poster asked a question and I answered honestly. I am not going to lie to make people feel better about themselves. Story 111. Not more intelligent, but aware of certain things they might not be. I am sure there are some things they are aware of that I am not aware of. Story 112. Not very. I am just hardworking if needed. Most people, unfortunately, are bound by their own minds and resort to habits granted to them by society and their upbringing. I believe many people are intelligent once they set their minds to it. Story 113. Depends on the friend group. One, I am a genius. The other, I am a baby learning about the world. Story 114. Some days I feel smarter than many people I interact with. Other days I feel like I am a knucklehead. Story 115. I observe people and notice those around me at various levels. I consider myself slightly above average by listening to others talk. Story 116. I think I am on par with those around me, but everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. Almost no one is strong in every single area of ability. Story 117. It really depends. I am currently in the top 5% of my school, but it depends on the situation. Sometimes my brain just does not work. Story 118. I am above everybody. But as an autistic person, I get pushed around by everyone and never talked to. So I play dumb all the time. However, I can manipulate situations and get what I want. Story 119. I am kind of forgetful, bad at mathematics, and not good at just hearing something and understanding it immediately. Logically excellent. Socially average. Reading people outstanding. Most of my skills are annoyingly useless, and my intellectual ability is not really known by anyone other than people who truly know me, which is decent. Story 120. I started working with civil engineers and professional land surveyors. I feel like one of the least intelligent in the room now. Story 121. I am smart enough to know I do not know everything on a grand scale. I am surrounded by people who think they know everything because they can turn a key to start a motor they know nothing about. They keep trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It is not everyone, but the percentage is significant. Story 122. I don't know, but I feel like a primitive person when it comes to social intelligence. I am not socially awkward at all. Conversation just always feels like three-dimensional chess from Star Trek unless the person also has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Story 123. I currently work in a skilled trade. My coworkers are definitely more experienced than I am at this job. However, being knowledgeable, I have had to step in several times to clear up confusion. Story 124. Depends. I've come to the opinion that people essentially fall into one of two groups. Group 1 consists of people who become extremely knowledgeable about a very limited set of things. These people excel at learning deeply because they are skilled at sequential learning. Group 2 consists of people who are less skilled at sequential learning but are very skilled at synthesizing information. This group is good at creating broader, more comprehensive understandings of systems. Examples of Group 1 include doctors, mechanics, and biologists. Examples of Group 2 include politicians and analysts. A good example of Group 1 is Ben Carson, a brain surgeon who believes that dinosaurs lived 5,000 years ago. He is very smart but also lacks understanding in some areas. For Group 2, intellectual types generally fit the bill. I am not a Group 1 person. I often wonder how some people learn so much about specific topics, but I am better at the skills of Group 2. Story 125. It depends on the task. Coming up with a very specific vocabulary word is excellent. Doing a visuospatial task is difficult. Story 126. I would say I am pretty intelligent based on above-average common sense and intuition. However, I struggle more with emotional and social intelligence but have learned to adapt and mask it where required. I am by no means academically intelligent. However, this is an area I am not personally concerned about. Culturally, I am able to learn and retain knowledge on things that interest me. Intelligence is hard to quantify. Story 127. I like to think I am intelligent, but I do a lot of foolish things. The people around me seem to do foolish things more often. Story 128. I work in information technology, and most of my colleagues have some form of technical education and also work in information technology. It is very frustrating that even people who have been working in the same industry for 20 years or more do not understand what I am talking about or how I am solving problems. To most of them, I seem like a magician. I am not particularly smart, and my theoretical skills are average, I would say, but I am very efficient at solving problems and designing solutions. So I would describe myself as pragmatic. I feel lonely quite often, as I do not have anyone with whom I can share my ideas and thoughts. I have also given up on finding people to talk with without getting bored. Story 129. It all depends on how one measures intelligence. I feel more aware than everyone around me, which often makes me wonder. For example, I avoid blocking the entire sidewalk and am not fully lost in my cell phone while out and about. If I text and walk, I keep looking up and around to make sure I am not walking into people or traffic. I am good at thinking outside the box and in multiple directions at once. However, I have a terrible memory and cannot tell neat stories about past events or conversations. It is just blank for me. I also have visual aphantasia, which means I cannot see images in my mind. I am probably not as smart as I think I am. Story 130, more than most. I get results. That's how I know. You can argue with methods, but a result is a result. If you can't get me a result, then you're not accomplishing anything. Results range from talking people out of suicide to gaining the respect of armed individuals, getting under bullies' skin, and correcting police officers. Results that matter, not that work for a certain time and pretend you're useful nonsense. My dad used to work in a casino, so I know the game is rigged. Another lesson he taught me is that if something seems too good to be true, then it probably is. I also learned about Sun Tzu, know thy enemy. Then I learned to let myself be a target. The rest wrote itself after that. I learned from my mistakes. I don't pretend to be innocent. Now look at others. What are they doing? People don't realize it's their own reflection they fear. The truth is you have nothing to fear but your own weakness and inability. I'm just the reminder. Story 131. Stupid people drinking water meme gif. Story 132. Intelligence is subjective. I am academically adept, but I come from a family where most men are in the trades. I have relatives who are builders, plumbers, and car mechanics. They are much more useful than a string of degrees, especially if society unfortunately breaks down. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.